Just picture yourself learning a little-known fact about George Harrison from his son, Dhani. What if this hidden fact has the power to alter our perception of the renowned artist for all time? Dhani Harrison's heartfelt disclosure of his father's unpublished songs is the topic of today's video. Let's delve into the profound emotions evoked by these songs, George Harrison's lasting effect, and the strong bonds that remain within his family. Not only was George Harrison a member of the Beatles, but he also had a significant role in influencing and spiritualizing contemporary music. George, who was known as the Quiet Beatle, was an innovator in the introduction of world music components into rock and roll, with his own blend of sounds impacted by Indian spirituality and culture. Embracing Hinduism had a major impact on George's music and lifestyle. His spiritual path started seriously amid the peak of the Beatles' stardom. Songs like Within You Without You and My Sweet Lord demonstrated his extraordinary musical and lyrical abilities, while also touching the hearts of millions worldwide with his profound search for spiritual significance. Rich, thoughtful melodies and introspective lyrics made these songs stand out, transcending cultural and musical boundaries. In addition to his music, George is remembered for his modest but significant humanitarian work. In 1971, he orchestrated the Concert for Bangladesh, a landmark among early big-name rock concerts that raised money for humanitarian causes. His selflessness in using his popularity for the greater good of mankind and his unwavering commitment to his principles made an indelible mark. Additionally, George's spiritual life was mirrored in his enthusiasm for gardening, which he did prolifically. For him, tending a garden was like meditating on a steady stream of earth. Friar Park, his mansion, had expansive gardens that he meticulously maintained, showcasing his passion for gardening. George Harrison's impact endures even after he passed away in 2001. Artists and audiences alike are drawn to reflection and investigation by his attitude to life and music. Even after he passed away, his music continues to move those who are looking for deeper meaning in music. However, how can a son oversee a legacy of this magnitude? Dhani Harrison, who was born on August 1, 1978, had a childhood that was more than typical, full of music, imagination, and a legacy that would have eclipsed most kids her age. George and Olivia Harrison brought their only child, Dhani, up in a musical and cultural environment that she was gradually exposed to. A man of few words but great insight, Dhani's father instilled in him a unique philosophy of humility, creativity, and spirituality. Dhani spent her formative years in the nurturing environment of Friar Park, George's vast Henley-on-Thames estate. In the estate, Dhani was able to absorb his father's love of gardening and music, while also finding a peaceful environment in which to develop his own interests and talents. Friar Park was a haven for Dhani's early enjoyment of the creative process, with its resounding guitar strumming and the infectious laughing of pals. Having a Beatle father presented its own unique set of difficulties for the boy. Dhani was often in the spotlight even as an infant due to George's renown. He deftly maneuvered through this spotlight, determined to stand on his own 2 feet rather than be compared to his famous father. One indication of George's modest parenting style is that he let Dhani, despite his towering stature, to choose his own path. Over time, music became an integral part of Dhani's life, and George gently fostered his son's growing passion for it. Dhani studied guitar from his dad and had a natural talent for music theory and composition from a young age. George encouraged Dhani to follow his passion without pushing him, instead providing supportive feedback and space for him to develop his own unique style. The legacy his father left behind piqued Dhani's interest as he matured. The vast collection of George's music, essays, and personal insights offered a glimpse into his mind, a gold mine of creative knowledge. As a result of his insatiable curiosity, Dhani found himself more responsible for carrying on his father's work. Feeling a deep need to pay tribute to his father's legacy, even as he forged his own creative path, he set out to record George's music and spread his message for the benefit of generations to come. A set of incomplete tracks left behind by his father was the surprising find that piqued Dhani's interest. George had not finished these songs when he passed away in 2001, but they were stashed away at Friar Park's library. When Dhani uncovered these musical compositions, it was like discovering a treasure map to his father's creative spirit. After being profoundly affected and motivated by these findings, Dhani had to make a big choice. Should these incomplete symphonies stay hidden as a family heirloom, or should everyone be able to hear them? In the end, Dhani determined it was time to unveil these works after consulting with George's loved ones and acquaintances. Dhani undertook the arduous assignment with a blend of respect and responsibility, understanding that every note and lyric included a bit of his father's soul. He started the careful process of finishing these tunes. To make sure that George's musical goals were kept intact, he went to musicians who had worked with him before, such as Jeff Lynne and the rest of the traveling Wilburys. More than simply a son finishing his dad's phrases, the piece served as a link across generations, allowing Dhani and George to have a discourse that didn't care about geography or time. With his musical abilities, Dhani respectfully completed the songs, fusing his father's traditional style with his own contemporary sensibilities. He devoted himself totally to the endeavor. Dhani came to appreciate George as a parent and a human being with profound, unmet ambitions. He also got closer to knowing George as a worldwide symbol throughout this process. At last, the tracks were prepared for playback. Dhani decided to have a listening party with a small number of music reviewers, friends, and family members as their first introduction. The feedback was so good that they decided to put them out there as part of a posthumous album titled The Apple Years. Posthumous releases often elicit a wide range of reactions from fans, and this one was no exception. As soon as word got out, devoted admirers were ecstatic. Many saw this new compilation as an opportunity to reconnect with George Harrison's inventiveness and the musical spirit that had moved and inspired generations before. The complex melodies and lyrics that exposed George's soul astonished longtime followers, who saw these songs as a lovely continuation of his legacy. But there were doubters. Some people were worried that by modifying these tunes, which were originally incomplete, George may distort his vision and make them not represent his ultimate goals. Their biggest concern was that Dhani and his team may steal ideas from George without realizing it. Some have questioned whether or not posthumous releases are an attempt to cash in on an artist's legacy after their death. Despite these conflicting feelings at first, the majority of followers could see that Dhani valued his father's heritage very highly. Thanks to Dhani's influence and personal connection, the meticulously chosen record managed to capture George's music, while also offering a fresh viewpoint. A well-rounded blend that sounded both old and new resulted from George's unique voice and Dhani's complementary arrangements. Musicians and reviewers alike were captivated by the album's release. They lauded the way it blended modern and classical styles, saying it continued George's work so well. Many were amazed by Dhani's ability to honor his father's legacy while subtly incorporating his own ideas. Many people could relate to the melancholy tone that this musical conversation between generations produced. The record has a larger societal influence than just individual emotions. It brought George Harrison's music to a new audience and sparked interest in his earlier works again. The fresh music piqued listeners' interest, which in turn led them to rediscover George's earlier work and revel in his unique blend of comedy, creativity, and spirituality. Finally, by sharing these songs, Dhani paid tribute to both his father and the timeless link that music can establish between people of different generations. He treaded delicately on the boundary between conserving and expanding upon a heritage. Fans were given a touching and unusual look into Dhani and his father's relationship, as their deep affection for each other was evident in every note. What is Dhani's genuine opinion on these songs and their release, though? Respect for his father's music permeated Dhani Harrison's approach. Songs, guitars, and lyrics were an integral part of George Harrison's upbringing, permeating every aspect of his existence. Even before he grasped its full relevance, his father's music brought comfort and insight to his formative years. Dhani found himself at a personal crossroads when he discovered his father's unfinished recordings. The finding was both a blessing and a curse for George. It allowed him to re-establish contact with his father and relive happy times, but it also forced him to face the burden of his father's legacy. In order to give these songs justice, he understood he had to deal with his feelings. Dhani felt his father's presence directing him as a son and musician as he listened to each song. Some songs made him think of tender times spent with his family, and he could almost hear a father and son having an intimate chat. George's lyrics provided Dhani with a path to follow. It was a labor of love and loss to edit and finalize the records. Each note conveyed both appreciation and sorrow, bringing back memories while also providing solace in the knowledge that George's voice would be heard again. While incorporating his own skills into the plans, Dhani sought to maintain George's essence. A lot of people might relate to this emotional trip. A community was born out of the new music that recognized the special relationship between a father and his kid. Thanks to their encouragement, Dhani felt safe enough to let her guard down, focus on the music, and make room for others to honor George's legacy in unity. Dhani made an effort to be true to himself despite his strong ties to the past. While honoring his family's history, he aimed to carve out his own unique identity. He was aware that people would inevitably draw parallels to George, but he was determined to let his music stand on its own. He was able to discover his sound and experiment with contemporary music with his band, the New Nuntu. Dhani kept his creative spirit alive even while he curated George's posthumous record. He continued to compose his own songs. How can Dhani keep his own personality while being so bound to his past? There were some difficulties specific to being the son of George Harrison. The realm of music aristocracy was thrown upon Dhani at a young age. On one hand, he had an illustrious family history of artists and spiritual seekers around him, and he was surrounded by extraordinary ability. On the other side, he had the monumental challenge of continuing that tradition while also developing his own identity and voice. There were enormous public expectations. Many George Harrison fans, especially those who looked up to him as a spiritual and musical mentor, had strong feelings about what should happen to George's unreleased work. Dhani felt a special responsibility to release the songs in a manner befitting his father's memory. While navigating the emotional complexity of interpreting unfinished work, every choice has to take George's artistic vision into account. Also, following in his famous father's footsteps as a musician was a huge burden for Dhani. Dhani had the ongoing difficulty of balancing family homage with own originality, and there were moments when similarities to George's work overshadowed her own contributions. Despite the tremendous personal commitment he had to preserve George's legacy, he was resolute in his pursuit of artistic independence. The music itself was often the object of examination. There was a lot of pressure on Dhani from the media and fans who followed his every move. In spite of everything, Dhani maintained his composure. His father's musical heritage represented his profound connection to the natural world, and he knew he was doing more than just carrying on his father's work. He hoped to keep that bond alive as he allowed his own imagination to flourish. Posthumous releases were emotionally and logistically difficult, and Dhani had a hard time grasping and managing them. To make sure the end result would be true to George's vision while still appealing to contemporary listeners' preferences, he collaborated extensively with engineers and other partners. Dhani had inherited his father's qualities of humility and patience, which were essential to the laborious procedure. He came at the project with love and honesty, which gave Dhani comfort, even though he knew not everyone would approve of his artistic choices. He hoped that by making these songs available to the public, he might ease the pain of his admirers and help them feel closer to George Harrison's legacy. Dhani found pleasure in her endeavor despite the difficulties and demands. Going on this trip was more than simply a duty for my job. It was a personal commitment. It was a chance to honor his dad, spread the gospel that had changed his life, and bring George's music to a new audience. What, however, is in store for these unheard songs going forward? The future of George Harrison's unreleased music is intriguing and full of unanswered questions. After painstakingly going through his father's archives, Dhani Harrison knows that the songs have a lot of promise for future endeavors. But who may be a part of making these songs a reality, and how will they be showcased? While preserving the integrity of his father's vision, Dhani imagines group endeavors that may bring attention to George's unfinished work. The idea of asking other famous musicians to reimagine George's unreleased music has been floated by him. Working together in this way has the potential to bring new ideas to the table and bring George's legacy to a younger generation. The goal is to put these songs into coherent musical productions that will attract new listeners as well as longtime enthusiasts. Taking the family heritage in a new multimedia direction is another avenue to explore. The music might serve as the basis for documentaries, video collections, or even interactive performance experiences that bring George's voice and soul to life via technology. While making sure the new shows stay true to George's music, the goal is to let listeners see how he comes up with his ideas. While it is important to honor George's memory, Dhani knows that it is even more important to promote and grow his father's artistic legacy, which includes giving his own musical talents a platform. Instead of vying for focus, he understands that his job and his father's should live in harmony. Dhani takes great care not to profit from the music in any way when he approaches these initiatives. We want to provide George with a meaningful gift that aligns with his values and his commitment to spiritual awakening. For this reason, we can expect these initiatives to have a strong emphasis on charity or raising awareness for subjects that George was passionate about. This way, we know that the releases will have a good impact beyond just entertainment. A number of people, including Dhani, are thinking of ways to pay tribute to their father's legacy. There has been further backing from other members of the Beatles' extended families for posthumous releases that delight fans. George Harrison's wife Olivia is very engaged with the management of these initiatives, making sure that the publication of the music is done with care and consideration. This resurgence of George's music is also seen by the families of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr as a great opportunity to rediscover a storied musical past. They are overjoyed to see George's impact reaching new audiences. There are a lot of unknowns when it comes to George's unreleased songs. As Dhani skillfully steers these artistic endeavors, he hopes to reach out to admirers both old and new, while paying homage to his father George's work in a manner that honors his creative values. What are the opinions of other members of the Beatles family on these developments? Many of the other Beatles families have rallied around Dhani Harrison in his efforts to carry on his father's work. Posthumous releases are something that Paul McCartney is very much in favor of because to his legendary connection with George Harrison. Fans should have the pleasure of finding more of George's personality via his unreleased songs, he says, since George's work should inspire generations. At the same time, members of Ringo Starr's family have shown their support. Ringo, who was George's closest confidant during the band's prime, has nothing but praise for George's commitment to music. The significance of these songs is obvious to his loved ones, and they are overjoyed that they will be accessible to future generations. Particularly important to continuing her husband's work is George's widow and Dhani's mother, Olivia Harrison. More than simply music, she sees the unreleased tracks as recollections of George's creative genius. In order to bring these truths to light in a careful manner while maintaining George's genuineness and generosity, Olivia works closely with Dhani. These disclosures have piqued the interest of Yoko Ono and Sean Lennon, who represent John Lennon's half of the Beatles' legacy. They think Dhani will do a great job of continuing George's legacy of creativity and innovation by overseeing the Beatles' operations. The significance of these posthumous endeavors is acknowledged by the extended Beatles family in the end. Their hope is that the new albums will reawaken fans' interest in George Harrison's compositions and the innovative spirit that was the Beatles' defining characteristic. The boundary between the past and the future is often hazy in the music industry, as we have witnessed today, particularly with legacies as extensive as George Harrison's. New tales and feelings might be revealed by listening to his unpublished music. If you want to be the first to know about our new material, like and subscribe, then you should definitely click the bell icon.